Disney has capped its former CEO Bob Iger return as head of the company for 2 years, firing his hand-picked successor Bob Chapek. It's a stunning shakeup that represents a shocking end to a bitter power struggle between Chapek and Iger. For more on this, let's bring in our very own media reporter, Allie, Canal. Allie, wow, so this dropped in the middle of the night on a Sunday. Take us through this. You know, in many respects, this is Bob Iger coming back, one of the most legendary CEOs we've covered in recent times, but he's handling, or he's taking over a company in turmoil.
The stock is down about 40% year to date. Since Bob Chapek took over, the stock is down about 19% since that time of February 2020. But right now, Disney shares reacting very positively to the news. Investors clearly think this is a good thing. Now, there had been zero reporting leading up to this. Many executives and workers apparently had no idea this was even happening up until they got that email from Bob Iger. The press release that Disney sent really explained the crux of this. And this is the most important part of that release to me. Iger will serve for 2 years with, quote, a mandate from the board to set the strategic direction for renewed growth and to work closely with the board in developing a successor to lead the company at the completion of his term. So Iger basically will be responsible for setting up the company for this next CEO. It seems like he will handpick whoever that is. And as you sort of alluded to, there had been this growing tension between Bob Chapek and Bob Iger. The two reportedly did not speak. Chapek had advisors. Iger was not a part of that. Iger, in fact, he would publicly denounce some of the decisions of Bob Chapek on Twitter and in interviews, and that didn't help with the public sentiment. I was at D23 in September. People booed Bob Chapek when he got out on the stage. So the fans, the Disney fans, they don't really like him as a CEO. And of course, he's had a pretty embattled tenure with the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit. He did a whole company restructuring that angered and confused a lot of workers. Of course, the Don't Say Gay bill fallout from Florida. So he hasn't had an easy go at it as CEO. But in June, Disney renewed his contract for another 3 years through 2025. And that to me signals that this company is a bit directionless in a sense, because at the end of the day, no matter how beloved Bob Iger is, there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and so now with Bob Iger, again, having that opportunity to handpick whoever is next, it's still going to come down to who he sees really moving forward Disney at a time where, sure, streaming, that was really much of the growth story for the past couple of years, but then there's also bringing the parks, bringing the resorts back online as well, too. Yeah,
and that's a big part of it. And we know that Disney is going to enact some hiring freezes. They have layoffs that are coming down the pipeline as well. So that was announced just a few weeks ago from Chapek, and he was part of this board that was going to make decisions about how to get the company back on track, how to save on costs, which we've seen throughout a lot of the media and tech companies out there. So a lot on Bob Iger's plate stepping into this, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of policies he makes at this point and moving forward. And I think 2023, we're going to get a really good sense of that.
And the other thing that strikes me about all of this is that this strategy that Chapek has really doubled down on in terms of the streaming strategy, emphasizing the streaming, that's something that Iger put in place, right? It's not like Chapek invented that. Iger was the one who really initiated that strategy and emphasized that strategy. And Chapek, even though there have been some headwinds to the streaming business, and they're spending more on it, and it's not going to be profitable as maybe as soon as they thought it was, he's still kept on that. So it's like, what is Iger not going to do that, right? It'll be interesting to see what exactly changes he's going to implement when he comes in. Or is it more just a cultural and symbolic? Like, it's hard to figure this out.
I think that's what it is. I think it's an about face for the company. I think the Disney fans didn't love Chapek. There's a lot of issues with a lot of the executives that apparently did not like Chapek's leadership style. But like you said, I think they were all working towards the same goal. So it just, and like the fact that Disney, I just can't believe that Disney renewed his contract for 3 years.
It looks like Bloomberg's reporting he's still going to get a $23 million payout.
Exactly.
At least,
the contract stipulates that he's entitled to that pay through 2025. So what changed for Disney from June, which was not that long ago, by the way? They really doubled down that he had led them through the pandemic era, that they came out on top, and that his leadership was essential in keeping them in that position of growth and power. So it just is a little confusing to me. Why now? Why is this all happening?
Well, I think it's also Iger coming in here, cooling a lot of heads, regaining the confidence of employees, regaining the confidence of all the distributors. And I think that's why you're seeing the stock price up. This is a guy who helped build the modern Disney. Wall Street is loving this. Every note that I've seen on here this morning, Wells Fargo, Stephen Cahill, their longtime media analyst, loving that Iger is coming back here. But in the same breath, you now have an activist investor here. So the Wall Street Journal reporting this morning that Tryon took an $800 million stake in the company. I'll try and not return my request for comment on that stake, but you have to wonder, how much do they get that board seat, and what does a shakeup look like? Do they spin off an ESPN?
Well, and Third Point had already taken a stake, right? So when we talk about what's changed between June and now, you now have not one, but two prominent activists who have taken stakes in the company.
Right, and ESPN, that was a big point in the third point from investor of the Third Point, because they think that ESPN on its own could provide a lot more value to the company rather than where it's at right now, because there's a lot of confusion when it comes to the streaming strategy for ESPN. ESPN is clearly more a network entity than it is a streaming entity right now. And Disney needs to start making money. I mean, they reported a $1.5 billion streaming loss in the last quarter. They really need to make sure that they're doing the things that they need to do at the company to reach that profitability and to really appease investors. Because I think the stock price had a lot to do with this decision. As you were saying, Saz, right now, stock down over 40%. But look, this morning, Wall Street loving it. We had Reed Hastings tweeting about it, saying he wanted Bob Iger to run for president. Now that's a competitor.
Well, this also probably removes that.
Yeah, there was talk about that.
Yeah. And so this all comes with the wave of kind of the CEO reboots that we've seen in the past as well. I mean, we've got Howard Schultz back at Starbucks for now, at least until Lakshman starts. But that was a hand-picked selection by Howard Schultz, excuse me. And then now you have Bob Iger coming back, and the stock is reacting because there's certainty around Bob Iger. You know what he's going to do in this position, or at least you have a sense of the divisions that he's going to prioritize the most.
Well, it's all these boomerang CEOs, and not every case is a success story. Look at Jack Dorsey. He came back to Twitter, and look where that got him. But still, Howard Schultz, now he's back now. The stock reacted accordingly. But this is, I think what you're seeing in Disney is just that Bob Iger magic. This is just Bob Iger. The street loves this guy, as they should.
Yeah, he has that charisma. He is that executive that people trust, and he has that likability factor. So we'll just have to wait and see how this goes. But I mean, I remember watching that interview with Bob Iger and Bob Chapek when they said Chapek was going to take over, and they were together and they were happy. And then all of a sudden the tensions escalated and they no longer spoke. And I think that played a role in it as well.
Yeah, as Earth, Wind, and Fire would say, something happened along the way.
Yes.
We used to be happy. It was sad. Allie, thanks so much for joining us now. Appreciate it.